You and your staff go to these tournaments and see lots of players. How did you find kids in Australia? Don't you have a former player, Claudia Broussard, live down there? Did she alert you to these two?
Well, she did a couple of years ago. She told us to keep our eyes on them, and they actually toured last year, and I know I went to see them play. They also played Duncanville, I believe, last year. Came and played Duncanville, and I think maybe Deneen saw that. So we saw them a couple times over here. But it's really been in the last year where they've really, I think, have really developed as players. I know Alicia was the youngest player on the national team, by far the youngest player. And I think they're two of the most talented younger players in Australia. In fact, Alicia is ranked number 1 in Australia in her age group, and then Keely's ranked number 3 in Australia in their age group. So they're very well thought of. Because they are so good, you also fight the fact a little bit that Basketball Australia, I think, are trying to make it enticing for them to stay in Australia. So, that always makes it a little bit tough when you're dealing with international players, especially of that level. So that's probably something we'll stress over the rest of the year.
For the sake of just putting it in perspective, what's the level of competition like in Australia compared to, say, the Duncanvilles and the other programs here?
Well, it's a little bit different. They're at an institute, and they just came off a trip where they went to Hungary for 2 weeks and played a number of teams. So they've got good competition, but I don't think it's going to be like the competition that they would play with and against every day if they came to the States. And the other thing is you're playing against some of the best players in the world, future WNBA players. The United States has some of the top players in the world. Australia is probably the number 2 women's basketball country. But just also the opportunity to potentially play in the WNBA. And playing the WNBA, if you're drafted in the WNBA, there's a great chance that you're going to be selected for the Olympic team in Australia. And their goal is to represent their country and play on the Olympic team, which I think is a very reasonable goal for them because they are that developed for their age group.
You mentioned the 2 transfers. Morgan Bolton comes in from Arkansas Little Rock.
Yes.
Doesn't get to play for you until next year, but you have the benefit of practicing with her. What have you seen from her? What kind of player is she going to be for you?
Well, I think she hustles and she's going to do what you tell her to do. I think Morgan probably needed a year under our system, and I like to see her work on her outside game a little bit more, be more consistent with her shot. She's going to D up, she's going to get after it, and just understand how I think. Your point guard's got to be an extension of the head coach, and she has to understand that, and she's got to maybe get smarter in some of her decisions, and just to do things with the purpose. So I think it's good that she's under our system for a year.
And then Kami Cole, like you said, her sister Kenzie played for you. Are they similar players?
Yeah, they both love to shoot. Kami, that's what I like is she has such a quick release. Kami really does have a quick release. She has a shooter's mentality. There are areas of her game that need to develop and that we talked about when she came in, and most shooters like that, like Kami, don't necessarily work on their ball handling skills as much, and her ball handling skills must improve and her passing skills because shooters hardly pass the ball. I mean, if you really think about it, most shooters struggle when you get to this level on making good interior passes, simple things as passing away from the defense and not floating the ball, just little things, and also being able to run a 2-man game effectively because right now coming in, when she was at TCU, they used her strictly as a shooter. And a shooter where it's a kick-out shooter or, maybe coming off screens, but she didn't handle the ball. So I think because she never handled the ball last year on this level, I think she lost some of her ball handling skills that she had in high school. So that's kind of what we're trying to develop a little bit more this year.
And by adding her, you don't have to play against her anymore when you go over to Fort Worth.
No, it's nice. And I'll tell you what, she is a zone buster. And these days, we're seeing a lot more zone because of the way the game is being officiated. Both the men's side and the women's side have really taken a stance and said, all right, you're going to either play defense with your feet or we're going to call it. And if you notice now, there's so many touch calls. basically, you put your hand on a player that's dribbling the basketball, they're going to make the call. And that's why you see so many teams playing zone. I have never prepared for so many zones this early in the season, and I've never worked on our zone offense as much as we are.
You mentioned Morgan coming originally from Duncanville High School and how much success they've had. This is your third Duncanville player now. You've got Akil Simpson, you've got Kiara Perry. Are you trying to lock down a sort of a Duncanville to SMU pipeline there?
Well, we'd like to. They have a number of players there, and they just had also one of their great players go to Texas. She's one of the probably top 5 players in the nation. Just end up signing with Texas, and I think we got a pretty good pipeline. I think SMU and Texas probably split the wealth a little bit, but I'd like to keep it going because Kathy over at Duncanville does a fantastic job, and she produces some great players. And the key is when players know how to win, there's something to be said about that. Because KP is a perfect example. She doesn't know anything else, and she plays like that. She's the type of kid that it's not going to be flashy. She's going to be up there in all your stats, rebounds, your you getting to the free throw line, your assists, and as long as she's not high in the turnover area, we'll be fine. But she's pretty good. She's pretty good about that. But she just does a lot of everything, and I really think she has a chance to be a phenomenal player for us. Every game that she plays, there is something that she improves on.
You're looking at, between recruits and your transfers, you're looking at adding 7 new players. Obviously, they haven't had a chance to suit up for you yet, but how good can this class be?
They're very talented. I'm really excited about it. I think this class, as I told them when I was recruiting them, or I should say when we were recruiting them, this is a class that could be a defining class for us. This is a class that really can take us to that next level. And as I've told our kids, after this year, when Louisville and Rutgers leave, and then you've got some of the other Conference USA schools coming in, I want to be that team that Connecticut has to prepare for. And that's you try and sell to your kids what you're trying to do, what you want them to buy into. But I really think if this class comes in and stays together like this, and we get everybody in like we should, I really think, and it'll take a year because there's going to be a lot of freshmen playing next year. There'll be a lot of new players playing. I can't move as fast teaching and coaching this team as I am this year, and I'm even taking my time this year, and we only lost 1 player. So next year, with having so many kids, you got to really slow down your process of what you put in, and the good thing is now you can at least work with these kids when they're here in summer school.